Hi, and welcome back to the series of tutorials about Oracle Jet. In the previous video, we included an Oracle Jet UI component in our Oracle Jet application, which was a select single to select a sport or an activity. In this next video, um, we will be reviewing how to include a chart component in our Oracle Jet application. This will help us to understand a little bit better how Oracle Jet components work, how data providers work, and also how the template or render API work on Oracle Jet. And it will also be helpful to check a little bit of the interaction between Oracle Jet and TypeScript. So for that, we will go back to our application and we're going to add some data to it, so we can render the graphs and all that stuff. So what I did is add a data.json file under our uh, dashboard folder. This is a JSON object that is divided into four categories, or that has four properties, which are baseball, bicycling, skiing, and soccer, the ones that we already defined in our OJ select single component. And each of these properties has an array of objects in which each object represents a product related to that sport, and it also has some information about that product, like price, quantity shipped, quantity in stock, activity ID, etc., and even an image. So uh, in this step, what we will do is add this OJ component, and as we reviewed before, when we want to add an OJ component or an Oracle Jet component into our application, the first thing we need to do if we're not familiar with the component is go to the codebook, find the page about that component and go to the recipe section. Here what we need to do first is create the OJ chart, set the attributes required for the component, and that get a 3D chart with the style defaults 3D effect on attribute. Well, just set another attribute in the OJ component. For that, remember we go first to the demo TS to look what are the required dependencies that we need to import. In this case, if I'm not wrong, I think the one that we need to import is OJS OJ chart. And yeah, that should be it. So let's import it in our component. Let's go back to our dashboard component, dashboard/index, and import the OJS OJ chart component. And let's add it to our application right below the select single component. Instead of displaying the selected activity, now we're gonna be displaying a chart with information about the products related to that activity. So let's add the OJ chart component. And before doing anything else, let's see what are the properties that this OJ chart component requires. Uh, so according to the cookbook, what we require is an ID, a type of chart, the data, most importantly, the animation on display attribute, the animation on data change attribute. So I think we can copy all of this from here. We will just need to modify the data attribute. And yeah, I think we need to change this because this syntax or this, yeah, the syntax is for the knockout architecture. In the BDOM architecture, we mostly define the attribute names using camel case. So, oh, sorry. On data change, yeah. this one. No, sorry, it's not on data change. It's animation on display, and this one is the one that's animation on data change. So once those are set up, the next attribute that we need to define is the data provider. So in this case, we're not going to be using this data provider that we already created, the data provider for the types of sports that we have. In fact, what we want is a data provider that represents a list of products which are different from the types of activities or sports. So what we need to do first is create a new data provider. However, this data provider will depend on the value of the selected activity, because depending on what the user selects in its select single are the type of products that we want to be displaying on the OJ chart. So for that, what we're going to do is create a data provider. No, a product data provider. Let's call it product data provider. Products data provider variable. And this variable will be depending on the value of the selected activity. So we're going to be using a React hook called useMemo, which takes a function and an array of dependencies. In this case, the array of dependencies would contain the selected activity and probably the set selected activity. And what does this useMemo function does? Well, as I mentioned, it takes a function and a dependency array, and what it does is whenever any of the elements in the dependency array changes, it will run this function and assign its return value to the variable that is that the useMemo function call is assigned to. So what we want to do here is this to return the data, but we want the data only related to the selected activity. So this data variable it's gonna be the JSON object, and we're gonna access its property corresponding to the selected activity. But before that, we need to define the data, and we also need to import the useMemo hook. So if we go back to the top and import the useMemo hook from React hooks, and then import the data.json file. In Jet, you can import the text files using the following import statement: import asterisk or whatever from the file, but I forgot to add the as let's call it data text. Import everything as data text from a file, and we need to specify that this is a text file. So it imports it as a text file, and then we just give the path to that file that we want to import. So we import everything as data from data.json, and then the text that we imported, we're gonna turn it back into a JSON object using the JSON.parse function, and we're gonna pass the data text, and this is gonna be our data variable. So this product's data provider right now is assigned directly to the data, but in fact we actually wanted to assign it to an array data provider. So we're gonna want to create a new data provider inside this function. So I'm gonna remove this. I'm gonna start the body of the function and paste this back. And in fact, what we want to return is a new array data provider that has these as the dataset, and we also need to pass some options to the data provider, like in the one that's above. And we need to set the key attributes. In this case, the key attribute, or the attribute that will identify each object, would be the ID attribute, is the one that's different in every single object. So we'll specify that the key attribute is going to be the ID attribute. So right now, whenever we change the selected activity, we should get a data provider that contains only the data related to the activity we have selected. So if we assign that data provider to our data property in our OJ chart element, um, the OJ chart element should already have access to the data that we specify. So here we can see that it's not getting rendered because the OJ chart does not work by itself. It also needs a child element or a template element, which will define which of the properties of each object will correspond to the data reflected on the actual pie chart. In fact, I don't think here, no, we're not getting any errors at build, but it's simply just not displaying anything because it doesn't know how to behave. If you look at the demo in the cookbook, you will see that the OJ chart has this child, the template slot item template child. So this template helps us provide some context to the components on how the components should behave and how the children elements or the template elements should be rendered. In this case, the template element takes an attribute called slot, and depending on the value of the slot, the component or the template would behave differently. In this case, we want to add a template for the item template slot, so it knows how to render each and every single item. So let's add the item template value. And we can see that the template also takes another attribute called, it says it's not assignable to type template properties. Yeah, it's complaining because the template is empty and it should have either children, or I think we can also pass uh, a render attribute, which will take another component to be rendered inside this template element. So here in the cookbook, you can notice that the template element that it's passed is written right away in the HTML. They paste an OJ chart item element inside the template, and they access the data of the chart item through the data OJ as attribute, which this approach only works on the MVVM architecture. And the PDOM architecture, as I mentioned, we need the renderer. And the render is a component that takes the item context as props, and it returns a JSX element that will be rendered in the template slot. So what we need to do is create another component. We can call it. I mean, we don't need to export it because we're only gonna be using it inside our dashboard component. So we can call it chart item chart item template. it should return uh, an element to be a component, a JSX element, and it should also take as a parameter um, a context, which in this case, if I'm not wrong, it's an OJ chart item context. So for that, we also need to import the type definition for the OJ chart. So we're gonna import the OJ chart type and add the type for the parameters OJ chart dot item context. And I'm not sure if this takes some generic type parameters, but seems to work fine like this. So yeah, I think I made a mistake. It's not the item context, it's the item template context that we need. So once we have access to the item template context, let's just return a div for now, so we can pass this chart item template to our render. So chart item template, uh, and let's see if we can access the elements of the OJ chart inside this render component. So if I'm not wrong, this should return the item right away. Yeah, so this probably would be better as named as item. And inside here, as we looked at in the cookbook, what we need to render is an OJ chart item. I don't think we need to import it, so we're just gonna put it there right away. OJ chart item, and we're gonna pass it the parameters that we need. In this case, they are value, the group ID, and the series ID. In this case, the value would be the value that we want to be reflected on our pie chart, which would be, I guess, we would like to graph the quantity of items available. So the value attribute will correspond to the item dot data dot dot quantity attribute. Then we will need to specify the series, which is to which section of the pie chart it corresponds. So for example, series 2 is assigned to the one that is 31%. So this is basically how we want our values to be categorized, which in this case, if I would guess, it would be the name of the object. So we will say the Sure Catch baseball glove has a quantity of 73. And then the group, I think the group is not really necessary because it is a pie chart, so the group could be the same as the series. And I think I made a typo. Yeah, it's group ID and series ID, not group and series. So series ID and group ID. So this is how the group and the series will be identified. Uh, so I think we still have something missing to fix in the template that we're rendering inside the OJ chart component. Yeah, I think I found the error here. Apparently the template does not take the children the children attribute does not exist in the template object. So the only thing we need to do is remove the last the closing template tag and make it close itself. And also there's another issue here. We're assigning the same data provider to the select single and the OU chart, and we actually want to assign the new data provider that we created to the OU chart, the products data provider. So if we go back to our application, we can see uh, here we have a Sure Catch baseball club of 100%. In fact, I think it's only rendering the first one, so let's keep debugging our application and see why is this happening. Uh, so probably no, it's only taking one. So let me check why it's limiting itself to only one. Uh, Data selected activity. Okay, let's see if we're passing the complete data set to our data provider by selecting console.log data selected activity. So you can see that, yeah, effectively we're passing the entire array of objects to our data provider. So the issue shouldn't be on the data provider. So yeah, I have identified the issue. If we go back to the cookbook, remember the cookbook is always a good reference also for debugging your code. We can notice that in this example, all the objects have the same group assigned. So apparently the group was actually relevant. So what we need to do is make sure that this group ID is the same for for all of the objects that we're rendering in a single pie chart. So for that we could just set a hard-coded value, in this case prod. But if you look at the type definition of group ID, you'll see that it either takes a string array or a number array. So we will just wrap this into square brackets, and this should work fine now. So if we go back to our application, you will see that now we have rendered a pie chart, and for example, here in the baseball category, we see that we have the Sure Catch Ball, the Western helmets, another helmet, and a baseball bat. But if we change the bicycling to the bicycling category, we will see how the products change to only the bicycle related products. And in fact, you will see that also an animation is already implemented for whenever the data changes. So this is another of the advantages of all the animations that you require, or at least the most essential ones, are already implemented. So yeah, as I mentioned, you don't need to focus on the little details of your components, but rather on the business logic. And let's just go back to our code and see what we have. We just have a component with one state, uh, two data providers, one handler, and just a template. With just that, we already have a responsive interface with an entire pie chart, which is uh, which is dynamically rendered and which provides information about the dataset, and that has already implemented accessibility, responsive design, and even animation. So yeah, this is one of the advantages of Jet. With this little code, with just this 66 line file, uh, we already have a dashboard of the products dataset. And if we want to add more information, for example, add the details uh, of each product and also be dynamically rendered, we can do that easily now because we have already created the data provider. So for example, I think we could just grab another component from the cookbook. For example, a collection one, like uh, like the list view. Yeah, here, list view, basic list view, and just import it, pass it the data provider, define its template for the item, define the item template, and with that we should be able to view a little bit more of information, and it shouldn't take much time. I think we can do it right now. So if we grab this view, we add the import for the dependencies, and then we add the list view to our component, oj dash list view. We pass the data to the list view, which in this case is the products data provider, and we define a template just as we did in this other component, and change the render to let's call it list item template. We define the renderer. We can just copy this one, paste it, and instead of returning an OJ chart item, we return an OJ list item, I think it's called. If not, we can check the cookbook as always. OJ list item layout. Yeah, it needs an OJ list item layout. OJ list item layout. Uh, which I guess takes whatever inside of it. So for example, let's add a span that displays the item data.name. Well, in fact, this wouldn't be OJ chart, it would be OJ list item template context. We just imported OJ list from OJ list view, OJ list view, and OJ list view. Remember, this is the list item template. With this, we should see a list of the elements rendered below our pie chart. So let me just check why isn't it rendering, because this should work. I mean, we're passing the data provider to the list view. We're rendering this item template. So in the cookbook, apparently this text color primary, yeah, the spans also have some slot assigned. So if we set it to the slot that corresponds to slot secondary. Let me check if with this. No, let me give it a little check. So I notice what is missing. The only thing that's really missing is to wrap this in curly braces so it renders the actual data. We don't really need this slot here. What we do need to do is import this custom element. So this custom element is called OJList item layout. And we can see now that this is re-rendered that, yeah, the details are displayed in the list view. In fact, you can check the cookbook of the list view example to notice that you do need to import the OJList item layout. If we wanted to add more information about our products in the list view, we could do so, but by adding more information in the item template, for example. If we grab this and use the secondary slot here in the item layout, secondary, we could add the quantity of the item with something like quantity, and have it display more information about our products. And this will also change when we change the select symbol, because both the pie chart and the list view are linked to the same data provider. So yeah, basically once you have your data provider, uh, you can use it to populate various components, which makes it easier when your whole app is built in its entirety of OJ components. So yeah, so this is it for this part of the tutorial. I hope you liked it, and once again, thank you for your attention.